Imagine the electric speedster of the NRL, Reece Walsh, who once danced through defences like a ghost in the night, suddenly transforming into a fortress on the field, unyielding, unbreakable, and utterly terrifying. In 2025, this wasn't just evolution. It was a revolution that left rivals scrambling and fans breathless. But here's the twist that no one saw coming. His fiercest competitor, Nathan Cleary, the Panthers' golden boy, clocked it first, whispering warnings in the shadows of the prelims. What secret weapon did Walsh unleash, and how did it shatter empires? If that hook has your heart racing like a Walsh sidestep, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications now. Stay locked in for the full story that redefines NRL greatness. The sun-baked fields of Brisbane had always been Reece Walsh's playground, a canvas where his blistering pace and daring leaps painted masterpieces of mayhem. From his breakout days with the Broncos, Walsh embodied the raw thrill of rugby league, the kid with the cheeky grin who could snatch a game from the jaws of defeat with a flick of his wrist or a burst of acceleration that left defenders grasping at air. Crowds roared as he weaved through clusters of blue and gold jerseys, his tries not just scores but symphonies of skill that echoed through Suncorp Stadium long after the final whistle. Yet, beneath the glamour lurked a shadow, a vulnerability that sharper eyes had exploited. Back in 2023, during that brutal grand final clash against Penrith, Walsh's attacking brilliance had been his armour, but his defence? It was the chink that Cleary's precision strikes hammered without mercy. A dropped ball here, a missed tackle there, moments that turned triumph into heartbreak, fueling whispers that the young fullback was all flash, no steel. Off the field, Walsh grappled with the weight of expectation, the sting of injuries that sidelined him for chunks of seasons past, forcing him to rebuild not just his body but his mindset. He pored over footage in dimly lit rooms, dissecting his flaws like a surgeon with a scalpel, vowing silently that the next chapter would be different. Teammates watched as he arrived earlier to training, his laughter masking a fiercer determination. The Broncos camp buzzed with rumours of a partnership forming, an unlikely alliance with a veteran whose quiet authority commanded respect. Dylan Edwards, the Panther fullback whose organisational genius had anchored multiple premierships, became Walsh's shadow mentor. Late-night texts, shared drills, secrets exchanged over coffee in neutral cafes. Edwards preached the gospel of anticipation, of reading the plane not as a reactor but as a conductor, positioning yourself where the chaos would unfold. Walsh absorbed it all, his once loose positioning tightening like a coiled spring. But was this enough to silence the doubters? As the 2025 season dawned, the NRL landscape shifted, new rules favouring speed but punishing sloppiness. Walsh's early rounds dazzled. With his signature flair, a hat-trick against the Cowboys that went viral, evading 3 defenders in a blur of footwork that analysts called poetry in motion. Yet, in quieter games, glimpses emerged, a crunching tackle on a rampaging prop, a read that snuffed out a grubber kick before it threatened danger. Coaches nodded approvingly, but the real crucible loomed, the final series, where reputations were forged or forgotten. Walsh felt the pressure mounting, the ghost of 2023 haunting every warm-up. His family, ever his rock, reminded him of the boy who started in the juniors with nothing but dreams and dirt under his nails. As the playoffs ignited, the Broncos surged, Walsh's hybrid game flickering to life. But then, in the prelim final against Penrith, the collision course with destiny arrived. Cleary, ever the tactician, had schemed to probe those old weaknesses, expecting the familiar feast. What he found instead would upend everything, a revelation that turned rivals into reluctant admirers and set the stage for glory. The air crackled with tension as the two sides collided under the lights, every carry a battle, every offload a gamble. Walsh patrolled the backline like a sentinel, his eyes sharper, his feet surer. When Cleary's dagger pass arced toward the edge, Walsh was there, not chasing, but arriving, his shoulder crashing into the receiver with bone-jarring force. The crowd gasped, sensing the shift. Post-match, in the haze of defeat for Penrith, Cleary pulled no punches, his voice laced with a mix of frustration and awe. He saw it clear as day. Walsh wasn't just faster, he was fortified, valuing the grind of defence as much as the glory of attack. This wasn't luck, it was alchemy, a fullback reborn. But as the Broncos celebrated, a deeper question lingered. Could this fortified version withstand the ultimate storm, the grand final decider where legends are etched in eternity? The Melbourne Storm waited, their machine-like precision a nightmare for any backline. Walsh lay awake that night, replaying the prelim, feeling the weight of a city's hopes. Little did he know, the surprises were just beginning, and the world was about to witness a performance that would echo through history deep in the bowels of Accor Stadium, The 2025 NRL Grand Final unfolded like a thriller scripted by the gods of the game. Sweat-soaked jerseys clinging like second skins, the roar of 80,000 souls a thunderous heartbeat pulsing through the concrete. The Broncos, underdogs no more, faced the Storm's relentless machine, a team that had devoured contenders with surgical strikes and unyielding pressure. Walsh, strapped into his number 1 jersey, felt the familiar adrenaline surge, but this time laced with something new. Resolve, forged in the fires of mentorship and self-reckoning. The opening exchanges were a frenzy. Papenhuizen's lethal footwork testing the edges, Munster's boots sending bombs that rained like artillery. Walsh fielded the first high ball with poised tee that bordered on arrogance, his hands swallowing leather amid a swarm of purple shirts, then countering with a 40-metre run that ignited the Broncos' attack. Tries flowed early, his offloads crisp, his vision piercing, but the Storm clawed back, their forwards grinding metres like a slow-motion avalanche. Midway through the first half, disaster loomed. A Storm break on the right flank, Kamikamica barrelling toward the line with ball tucked tight. Walsh, reading the angle like a chess master, launched himself across field, his hit dislodging the Steeden in a puff of dust, the turnover that swung momentum, the moment that had analysts scrambling for replays. The stadium erupted, a wave of maroon and gold crashing over the stands, but Walsh barely paused, jogging back with the focus of a predator scenting blood. Halftime arrived nodded at 10-all, locker rooms steaming with strategy and sweat. Kevin Walters, the Broncos' wily coach, hammered home the mantra, defend the edges, trust the system. Walsh nodded, his mind flashing to Edwards' lessons, positioning not as instinct, but as art. The second half exploded into chaos. A Storm try leveled scores again, the clock ticking mercilessly. Then came the sequence that would define eras, Papenhuisen slicing through midfield, offloading to Katoa ghosting toward the corner. Walsh, from 15 metres back, anticipated the arc, his legs pumping like pistons, chasing down the winger in a blur that defied physics. His dive, a desperate claw at the ankles, forced the error, the ball squirting free into touch. Teammates mob him, disbelief etched on their faces, but Walsh waved them off, eyes already scanning the next threat. Minutes later, another Storm surge, a short kick hovering temptingly. Wardle. Wait, no, this was Katoa again, poised to ground it. Walsh's burst was supernatural, his body contorting mid-air to bat the ball dead, saving certain points. The scoreline teetered, hearts in throats, as the Broncos responded with Walsh's magic, a sidestep that bamboozled 2 defenders, dotting down under the posts for a try that silenced outers. But the Storm refused to fade, their bench depth a weapon, forcing errors in the Broncos' red zone. With 5 minutes left, trailing by 2, Walsh orchestrated the decider, a decoy run drawing in markers, freeing Reece Robson for the match winner. The siren wailed, confetti rained, and Walsh stood amid the pandemonium, premiership medallion heavy around his neck, tears carving tracks through the grime on his cheeks. This wasn't just victory, it was vindication, his defensive masterclass, 3 try-savers, tackles in the red zone that bent but never broke, elevating him from star to immortal. Cleary, watching from afar, sent a text that night, respect, laced with the sting of what might have been. The NRL world buzzed, headlines screaming of the fullback who had added steel to silk. Yet, as celebrations raged into the dawn, a shadow loomed larger than the trophy, the International Arena, where England awaited in the Ashes, Wembley Stadium a coliseum for global glory. Walsh, fresh from coronation, boarded the plane with quiet fire in his belly. Had his new edge sharpened enough for the world stage, or would the Poms expose the myth? The kangaroo jersey felt heavier now, the green and gold a beacon and a burden. Little did the footy world know, the shocks were far from over, and one play at Wembley would send ripples across oceans, turning Walsh from hero to legend in a heartbeat that stopped nations as the floodlights of Wembley pierced the London fog. The 2025 Ashes Test Series opener crackled with transatlantic tension, Australia's marauding kangaroos invading English soil, a clash of empires where pride trumped paychecks and history hung in the balance. Walsh, earning his maiden cap at fullback after Edwards' injury sidelined the incumbent, stepped onto the hallowed turf with the weight of a nation's expectations strapped to his back. The crowd, a sea of St. George's crosses waving defiantly, jeered the fresh-faced Queenslander, unaware they were witnessing the dawn of a dynasty. Mal Meninga, the kangaroo coach, had gambled big, slotting Walsh into the spine alongside legends like Tedesco and Munster, trusting his hybrid evolution to bridge attack and defence on foreign fields. The whistle blew, and England struck first, a Wellesby grubber exploiting early rust, the home side leading 6-0 in a cauldron of noise. Walsh, unfazed, marshalled the backline with newfound authority, his calls crisp over the din, directing traffic like a general in battle. Australia's response was ferocious, a Munster bomb contested fiercely, Walsh leaping highest to palm it back, sparking a chain of offloads that ended with his own try, a chip-and-chase sidestep that left Snead grasping shadows. The score evened, but England's pack, led by a rampaging Bateman, pounded the gain line, testing Walsh's resolve. Then, the moment that etched eternity. Midway through the first half, Wardle broke free on the left, arcing toward the corner with venom. Walsh, patrolling deep, read the trajectory like prophecy, his burst across field a streak of green, arriving not to tackle but to intercept, his anticipation snatching the ball mid-stride in a try-saving masterstroke that had 80,000 jaws drop in unison. Replays looped endlessly on big screens, the stadium falling silent before erupting in reluctant applause, even from the Pommy faithful. Australia surged, Walsh's second try a solo masterpiece, feinting left, accelerating right, dotting down untouched to push the lead to 20-6 at the break. Half-time buzzed with tactics, Meninga praising Walsh's poise, urging sustained pressure. The second stanza turned brutal, England clawing back with a penalty goal, then a Williams-Barnstormer narrowing the gap to 4. Desperation fueled the hosts, their edges probing relentlessly, but Walsh was a wall, his tackles stacking like bricks, a shed on Hall, a low drive on Young that forced a fumble. With 10 minutes ticking, a Tompkins offload threatened apocalypse, but Walsh's chasedown forced the knock-on, the turnover fueling a counter that Munster converted into points. The clock wound down amid English fury, sin bins, and scraps, but Walsh's man-of-the-match magic held firm. 2 tries, 150 running metres, 12 tackles without miss. As the hooter sounded, 34-16 to the Kangaroos, Walsh collapsed to his knees. The series lead secured 1-0, the world media dubbing him the new king of the code. Cleary, back home nursing prelim wounds, fired off a voice note. Freakish, unstoppable, a complete package now. This wasn't just a debut, it was domination, Walsh's defensive alchemy turning potential into permanence, his X-factor amplified by iron will. Whispers grew of a global takeover, endorsements flooding, kids in Manchester mimicking his steps. But amid the laurels, a quiet storm brewed, injuries nipping at Edwards' heels, whispers of state of origin tweaks, and England's vow for revenge in Test 2. Walsh returned home a hero, but the fire in his eyes hinted at unfinished business. How deep did this transformation run, and what empires would it topple next? The NRL off-season loomed, a canvas for reinvention, but one surprise phone call from a rival camp would flip the script entirely, pulling Walsh into a web of alliances that blurred club loyalties and ignited the hottest feud of 2026. You're tuned into Aussie NRL Updates, where we unpack the raw pulse of rugby league down under. Don't miss a beat, subscribe for weekly deep dives. In the afterglow of Wembley, Reece Walsh's 2025 Odyssey became folklore, a tale spun in pubs from Bondi to Bolton, where punters dissected his arc from prodigy to powerhouse. The defensive metamorphosis, once a whisper in Broncos huddles, now thundered across headlines, analysts poring over stats that screamed evolution, tackle efficiency up 25%, try saves tripling from prior years, all while his attacking hauls remained league-leading. This wasn't happenstance, it was deliberate reinvention, born of late nights with Edwards, whose Panther playbook became Walsh's Bible, drills on edge defense, video sessions breaking down Cleary's old exploits. The halfback himself, in a candid sit-down months later, unpacked the spotting. After that prelim gut punch, he'd seen the change in Walsh's body language, the way he fronted up rather than faded under pressure. It stung, but sparked admiration, a nod to the kid who'd grown fangs. Walsh's ripple effect spread, young Broncos mimicking his prep, juniors in Queensland clinics buzzing with defensive zeal. Off-field, he balanced the spotlight with grounding rituals, beach runs at dawn, family barbecues where footy talk yielded to laughter. Yet, surprises lurked, a cryptic social post hinting at off-season tweaks, fueling rumours of a kicking game edition. As 2026 loomed, the NRL calendar promised fireworks, rematch with Penrith, Ashes decider, origin under new blood. Cleary, plotting Panthers' resurgence, viewed Walsh not as foe but benchmark, their mutual respect a subtle undercurrent to the rivalry. Walsh's story, laced with grit and glory, reminded the code soul, greatness demands sacrifice, the flash must meet the fight. And in that fusion, legends are born, unstoppable, unrelenting, forever etched in the annals of Aussie sport. Aussie NRL Updates, your front row seat to NRL's wildest rides. Smash subscribe, like if Walsh's glow-up fired you up, and drop a comment. What's his next evolution? Catch you next time for more unfiltered footy fire.